Hello, good afternoon, everybody.
We did it.
We did it. Hello, Julie.
Hi.
Fantastic. We'll just give a minute or so for people to join.
Great. No worries.
That's awesome. It's actually very exciting. Looking down the registration list, we've got people joining from far and wide across the sports industry and across the globe. So welcome to everybody that's already joined and is joining and logging in now. It's great to have you with us. It's been a very positive reaction for this webinar, which I think probably demonstrates the appetite for women's sport at the moment and an eagerness to learn what you've been up to over in LA with Angel City. Julie. Okay. So we've got good numbers. I've just waited 20 seconds or so. There's a few more join us. Great. Well, let's kick off. So welcome everybody to New Era for Women's Sport, lessons from the launch of Angel City. It's great to have you with us this afternoon. I'm Harriet Leach, a legal director at Onside Law. Onside Law is a leading sports and media law firm headquartered in London, where I'm based, with offices in Switzerland and Australia, serving a global client base. We offer specialist, commercial and pragmatic legal advice to some of the biggest household names within the sports industry. And personally, I'm very proud to head up the firm's standalone women's football division, and I also lead our successful partnership with Women in Football. And as a firm, we're doing more and more within women's sport. I just want to give you a flavour of some of the exciting things that I've worked on recently within football. So I've acted for Hearts in the transfer of majority ownership to the supporters group, leading it to be the largest fan-owned club in the UK. And I was delighted to see Hearts Women secure the ECA Women's Football Awards in the last few days. I also deal with all the commercial arrangements for a WSL club and acted for Caroline Weir on her transfer to Real Madrid in the summer. But that's enough about me, enough about Onside Law. This afternoon is all about my fantastic guest and what she has built with Angel City. So I'm so excited to be joined by you, Julie, this afternoon. Julie is the co-founder and president of Angel City Football Club, the new professional women's football team in LA, which launched in 2020. I think we all know Angel City is making waves across the globe as one of the only majority female founded and run professional sports teams in the world. And just last year was named one of the most innovative companies in the world by Fast Company magazine. So very exciting. In addition to leading Angel City day to day, if that's not enough, Julie is active in the Los Angeles sports and technology communities. She's a board member of the LA Sports and Entertainment Council, the Rose Bowl Institute, the LA Sports Council, and is an active executive in the LA chapter of Women in Sports and Events. And she's also part of 2 SPACs focused on sports and gaming and entertainment. Julie's got loads of accolades, but to name a few, she's been named member of Adweek's Most Powerful Women in Sports. She's one of the most creative people in business by Fast Company and is on the Creative 50 list by Advertising Age. And last but by no means least, Julie's also a fantastic mum to 2 amazing children who I've had the pleasure to meet and spend time with. Now, before we get into conversation, I just wanted to set the scene really, and just to give an idea as to how this talk came about. I think it's just such an amazing time to be involved in women's sport and in particular women's football. It truly feels that we've entered into a new era for women's sport with record-breaking attendances, TV audiences, transfer fees and sponsorship deals recently announced across the world. But with the attention on the game increasing, that raises questions about its future and how it grows sustainably from here. And And we've seen recently that it's been announced here in the UK that Karen Carney MBE has been appointed by the UK government to conduct an in-depth review into the future of women's football, which will look at things including the potential growth, the structures within women's football and how welded it is to men's football, as well as the commercialization of the women's game. And so with that backdrop, it left me wondering, well, are there lessons to be learned from the US model of sport more generally, and indeed specifically with clubs like Angel City? And just to let you all know, so I've come back from an incredible trip to California, and it was incredible to spend time with Julie and the whole team behind Angel City. I think highlights for me was going to 2 Angel City matches. One away at San Diego's new Snapdragon Stadium, where we were part of a record-breaking NWSL crowd of 32,000. And then I also got to experience a home match at the Bank of California Stadium, which is the stadium that Angel City shares with Los Angeles FC. And I think it's telling that Angel City averages approximately 19,000 fans per match on home day, which is more than triple the league average. So not bad going, Julie, for a club playing in its inaugural season. And I think what was so just incredible was to witness firsthand the slick, exciting operation that is Angel City FC. It's groundbreaking, it's leading the way, it's trailblazing, and it's become the most valuable NWSL franchise by quite some way. I think it's key that this is dedicated women's only team, which has been grown from scratch in a couple of years. It doesn't have a men's club to piggyback off. And I think what was clear, and this really sort of came across in my time in California, is it's not just a football club, but a movement and a mission-driven brand based on community impact, female empowerment, and positive social impact. Of course, we know it's backed by a majority women-led ownership group of A-list Hollywood celebrities and sports stars, and they're aligned to social values, whilst at the same time the club is clearly driving value for them. But I think the thing I'll take away sort of most strongly is the community of loyal, diverse and super engaged fans. And I know that a lot of you that will join the call this afternoon will no doubt be wanting to know how Julie and her team have gone about that. So with that background, I can't wait to chat with you, Julie. And I know we're all excited on this call to learn more about Angel City FC and as well, perhaps look ahead to the future. Just a couple of housekeeping rules from me before we get started. This is very much designed to be an open chat, an open conversation, but we do appreciate if Chatham House rule is observed. You should have arrived to the meeting on mute, but if you please keep yourselves on mute throughout. And I'm hoping that there'll be an opportunity to ask questions to Julie towards the end of the session. How I'm going to ask you to run that is if you direct message me, then I will be able to select a couple and put those to Julie towards the end. So we're going to have sort of half an hour, 40 minutes conversation now. So Julie, one of the things that I was most impressed by is that you're someone that's new to football, new to sport really, before launching Angel City. I think it'd be really helpful if you could just provide a quick overview of your experiences before you set up the club.
Absolutely. And Harriet, it's a pleasure to be here. So thank you so much for letting me tell the Angel City story. Very new to football. In fact, the first match I ever attended was in August of 2019, which was in LA. It was our derby. We call it El Tráfico. It was LA Galaxy against LAFC. And it was the first match I attended with my co-founders, Natalie Portman and Kara Nortman. I thought I knew what fandom was. I'm a Trojan. I go to NCAA football games every weekend. There's nothing better than college football tailgates and the rivalry between those schools. And I was absolutely blown away when I walked into this match. I've been to the NBA, the NFL, NHL, every type of league in the US, and nothing compared to what I witnessed that day. And it really inspired me to want to build something exciting for the women's game in LA. At that match, there was a woman in the middle of the supporter section. They're called the 3252. And she was waving a sign that said, "Bring the NWSL to LA." And so Natalie, Kara, and I thought it was a sign. And well, the rest is history.
Yeah, and that's interesting, isn't it? Because there's obviously appetite and hunger there, but LA's got a lot of sports teams already. So did you feel that there was that hunger and that appetite to successively launch and build fans around a new offering of a women's soccer team?
Yeah, I mean, almost impossible. So just to take a step back, there are three female founders of Angel City Football Club: Natalie Portman, the actress and activist; Kara Nortman, who's a venture capitalist; and myself, that's an entrepreneur, as a background in entertainment, media, and gaming. And when we sought to raise money to bring a women's professional sports team to LA, one of the first pushbacks we got, other than the fact that we are three female founders, which doesn't happen in sports, certainly not in the US, three female founders that don't have a soccer background, that don't have a sports background. Karen and I played basketball, and Natalie will profess herself as non-athletic, which we all choose to disagree with. But the number two reason was the fact that LA is a city of champions. There are 9 professional sports teams in LA, plus USC and UCLA, 2 college teams that have a following as if it's a professional team, not to mention the beach and the mountains, so many things that can draw your attention away from sports, that to launch a women's soccer club when there were already 2 male professional teams there. A lot of people just didn't think there was room in the market. There's one women's professional team in the US, which is in Los Angeles, the WNBA team, the LA Sparks. They averaged maybe around 10 to 11,000 fans per game. And there's a lot of negativity on whether or not we could pull it off in this city where, if you're not successful and if you're not winning on the court, on the field, on the pitch, the fans in LA are really fickle and won't show up.
Yeah, and as you say, taking a step back then, so there's sort of 3 main individuals on day one, which is Natalie Portman, Kara Nortman, and yourself. And as I understand it, sort of Natalie and Kara in particular had been around the US women's soccer players and setup and working through their progression around equality and equality pay. And it's all very well having an idea, but it's obviously a huge undertaking to start a brand new sports franchise, not least that you think that there's hunger and appetite for it locally. You mentioned investment. Was that the first job to secure investment, or at least the initial investment, or was it to acquire the franchise, for example?
It sort of happened hand in hand. Natalie and Kara's paths crossed in a really unique way. Kara was speaking at a women's event, and at the end of the conference, she challenged all the participants to go up to 3 women and give out your name and number, to start building bridges, to start creating relationships so women could start helping women, right? And Natalie walked up to Kara and gave her number. Fast forward a little bit, Natalie was one of the original members of Time's Up. Kara got really involved, and to your point, Hattie, spent a lot of time with the U.S. women's national team, PA Executive Director Becca Rue, as they were embarking on their pay equity fight against U.S. soccer. So really driving for pay equity for the women, working on supporting women instead of tearing women down, working against discrimination that women feel in the workplace. And as I got to meet the players, they learned more and more about the National Women's Soccer League, about this league that was, in 2019 was in its 7th year, and started to follow the players. Then the women go on and win the World Cup in 2019, and Kara's on a flight way home, went and saw the match. Natalie couldn't make it, and Natalie starts texting her and saying, we should bring a women's professional sports team to the US, and we should bring a team to LA. Kara, of course, thought she was joking, and after the 2nd or 3rd text, Kara realized that Natalie was serious. From Natalie's point of view, it was about having impact, and if you want to have impact, you have to have a seat at the table. And at that time in the NWSL, the league had never had a commissioner. It was going into its 8th year. They just had secured their 10th team, which was Racing Louisville. So it was a little bit of growth happening in the league, but no commissioner. And we were really excited about it. Natalie, Kara, and I met at the end of August about bringing a team to LA. Our first stop was to LAFC. We wanted to be able to go to the league and say, if you gave us the expansion rights, we knew that we could build something. Was first and foremost where we were going to play. All right, we're fortunate that we do FIFA quality pitches to MLS stadiums in LA with LA Galaxy and LAFC. So started having conversations with both the clubs to make sure we'd have a home. Spent more time and went to LAFC first. Those conversations went well enough that they then introduced us to Merritt Paulson, who is the owner of the Portland Thorns and the Portland Timbers, who was really running the expansion committee at that time for the league. Kara and I flew up to Portland to give him our pitch, what we were going to do, how we were going to do differently, convince him that we were serious about this, sort of got his buy-in. And there wasn't much of a process at that time. It was sort of like, okay, if you build it, we'll sort of give you, we'll give you the expansion right. And that was what most of the fall and winter of 2019 was. The first thing was, what do we want to be? And we knew coming out of Time's Up, coming out of the success of the women's team and the World Cup, we knew that this was an incredibly unique moment in time, and we were going to be bigger than the game. This wasn't about building a football club. We wanted to build a platform that stood for equity and impact, a platform that used football to drive to equity for women. And to do that, our aspiration was to be a global brand. Because if we're a global brand, we can have the most impact, draw the most awareness and attention, drive the most revenue, and ultimately have the most impact. So we wanted to build an organization from the beginning where mission was at its core. And we talk about building an organization where mission and capital could coexist, where you never have to make a trade-off between doing something positive for the environment and for your community and driving revenue, because revenue really drives the engine that makes everything else possible. And that was a really difficult thing for investors to understand. In fact, after we had those initial conversations with Merritt, we sort of went into every investor call as if we had the rights. So, we didn't actually have them, but we felt like we had them, and we knew if we built it in the right way and moved fast enough, we could secure the rights. And so we went into the fundraising meetings, and it's Natalie and myself and Kara walking into these, and we approached them pretty traditionally. The most professional leagues in the US require a controlling owner. So someone who, at the end of the day, is accountable for the club and will invest in the club and will grow the club. And in the NWSL, you need to have a controlling owner that owns 35% of the club. And in the US, a majority of the clubs are owned by families or private equity teams. Like they own 100% of it, let alone 80 to 90%. So it was interesting at the time because we approached fundraising that way. We were trying to find people that understood sports, was passionate about women's soccer, understood this was an opportunity to invest, even though we were leading with purpose and we wanted to be a purpose-driven brand. There was a real goal to be profitable because most sports teams don't make money. A majority of sports teams don't make money. And it didn't make sense to us to launch something new and do it a totally new way and have the exact same outcome. We're not going to change the dialogue if we're like everybody else, right? We don't make money. We wanted to be able to show that we could lead with purpose and be profitable at the same time.
Yeah.
And so we started talking to investors, trying to find somebody that would, fund 80% of it, right? Giving Kara, Natalie, and I a minority position in it. And we couldn't close. And to your point, Hattie, it was like, what do you know about soccer? Who's going to run it? You don't have any sports history. LA is impossible. There's too many distractions. There was a women's team 10 years ago. It lasted a year and folded. And then we realized at that moment that no one was going to be as committed, as passionate as us, and nobody was getting it. They weren't understanding that you could really build it this way. They were really struggling with, well, if it's mission, isn't it really nonprofit? But if you drive revenue, then how are you going to lead with it? Like they didn't get it. And all of a sudden, we decided.
And also, is it quite hard to create a business model on a club that doesn't exist, although there is obviously projected revenue?
Oh yeah. I mean, it was really, it was definitely interesting. We knew again that to be successful in LA, first of all, as it relates to game day, we wanted to create a spectacle. Like we wanted to create an entertainment experience, right? So you're coming for the experience, you're staying for the game, you're leaving talking about both. And at the end of the day, our goal was to create an environment that was inclusive, that was diverse, that was welcoming, that created community, it created a sense of belonging, so that whether we won or not on the pitch, you still want to come back. Again, given that sort of fickle nature of Los Angeles in sports. We likened it to the 1980s Lakers Showtime era, where Jack Nicholson would come to every game and sit courtside, and you'd come to the Lakers to see who he brought. We wanted to create that same type of experience, to bring that caliber of people, because we wanted to create an experience that was for all people. Typically, when people think of women.
And you must be happy with how that's gone down as you're just sort of finishing out your inaugural season, because from having that experience firsthand of going down on match day to the Bank of California Stadium and seeing all of the activities, all the fan engagement around not just the match, but the build-up, as you say, whether it be a tailgate or we went to one of the fan parties, and there's such a diverse range of activity that's offered there, you know, fun for all ages, the sponsors can get involved, and then of course you have the match, but there's a lot of sort of initiatives with on match day in terms of engagement with the crowd, and I could see how you would reward some of the loyal founder fans as well in terms of that pitch side access. Can you just talk through some of those, because I think some people will be interested about, you know, how you create that match day experience that is sort of the wraparound, given particularly, as you say, the backgrounds of some of those founders with you, that it's all about technology and entertainment, and it's more than just a football club.
Yeah, I mean, it started with community. I mean, LA is an incredibly diverse community. We wanted that community to be reflective in the fan base of Angel City. And so when we sought to build the game day experience, we wanted something for everyone. That was really important to us. Whether you were a family, whether you had young girls or young boys, whether millennials, you were coming on a date, you were bringing your parents, you were old, you were young. We wanted something for everyone. Typically, women's sports hangs their hat on being for families. And that creates a very specific type of experience. And it can alienate some people if it's too family friendly. It also dictates your price point as well, because you want to make it, you know, affordable. We didn't look at it that way. Our perspective as related to both the game day experience and ticketing was that there is something for everyone. And as it relates to game day, our positioning was every single game is somebody's first. So each game, we were always trying to one up the game before. It's always someone's first. You're going to walk away from the match. You're going to tell a friend how incredible and how amazing it is. When they come, it has to be even better. So they go and tell their friend as well. And so to set the bar high, our opening match on April 29th, we called the greatest show on earth. That was our goal. How do we create the greatest show on earth? How do we create a fan fest that has something for kids, like a spirit station, a bar for young adults, activations by our partners, not just giveaways, and entertainment? We had an art battle that day. And since then, we've had DJs and live music. We've had dancers. We've had performances. This last game, we had a live human foosball table. But how do we create something fun and exciting so that you can get to the match early, you can meet your friends, you can have a great time, and then you go in and really enjoy football? And once that whistle starts, we say whistle, we keep it pure. We don't do anything between those two whistles other than keep the purity of the sport and create all the excitement before the match and after the match.
Yeah. And you mentioned there that there were difficult conversations at the outset with potential investors, you know, needing 80% funding from them. There was obviously a clear social mission brand there to sell. But how did you get them over the line? And in particular, as I think we all know, and possibly one of the things that Angel City is most well known for is the backing from, you know, really A-list celebrities and sports celebrities, both those that are currently playing and those that have retired. Yeah. How do you convince them that that business model is there?
It wasn't intentional. I wish it was. But in hindsight, we found investors who understood what we were trying to do. We found investors who they themselves had built a platform to push forward either their social initiatives, their business goals, or whatever their objectives were. And we found them in celebrities and athletes. Our first conversation with Eva Longoria, you know, with her and her business manager pitching this concept of building an organization where mission and capital could coexist. And she fundamentally understood it right away. Like, she is a brand in and of herself. And so she understood how she can use her celebrity, her platform, and her brand to push forward social change, as well as to, you know, push forward whatever her business endeavors are. And we found that with Alexis Ohanian. So Alexis Ohanian is our controlling owner. He is the husband to Serena Williams, founder of Reddit, now runs 776 Ventures. And he understood what we were trying to do, both just driving towards equity. watching what his wife faces day in, day out in sports, as well as wanting to invest in a sport that we think literally had no ceiling. Alexis is an early stage investor, had invested in esports when venture capitalists weren't investing in esports, and saw a real parallel between esports and women's sports, except that the women's sports athletes are more recognizable. They transcend the sort of the sport icon into a cultural icon. Everyone knows who Alex Morgan is. Everyone knows who Megan Rapinoe is. If I asked you to name 2 esports leaders, you'd have absolutely no idea. Like you wouldn't be able to come up with a name. So the fundamentals of women's sports gave you a better platform to grow. And he understood the power of social media. Women are better storytellers than men, and they're out there using their platform to tell stories. Megan Rapinoe's social following is over 4 million. Alex Morgan's is over 9 million. If you could tap into that, it could really grow. We also believe that fandom had changed drastically. It used to be you supported the league. Hey, I'm a football fan, so I watch the Premiership, right? And then, hey, I'm a fan of Chelsea, and then I'm a huge fan of Sterling, right? We believe fandom changed. You start with the player in the US. I'm a fan of the player first. I then become a fan of the team, and then I become a fan of the league. And so knowing that, we sort of flipped the paradigm where we really focused on how do we build our club, and then once we got players, how do we tell the story of all 20 of it go? And so how do we engage them, build their brand, leverage their brand and their presence to start to build Angel City? And so we got Alexis Ohanian on board, and then we started, Natalie made a lot of introductions, and all the women that went with Natalie to a 2019 friendly match in the US became investors. So Jennifer Gardner, Jessica Chastain, Uzo Aduba, we have America Ferrara, Sophia Bush, Lily Singh, Gabby Union. Then we pitched Julie Foudy, who was actually really excited and on board. And she's like, you got to get Mia. And Mia was an investor in LAFC. So we went and pitched Mia, and her first comment was like, look, if you're going after young girls, you're going to fail. Like, yes, LA has the largest amount of, youth soccer players, but they're all playing on the weekends. So we walked her through our business model, got me on board. And then Julie had this incredible idea to say, hey, what if we reached out to all the former U.S. women's national team players in the U.S. In Southern California. And we did, and it was this incredible email chain where they all said yes. So we have 14 former national team players. That includes Abby Wambach and her wife, Glennon Doyle, Billie Jean King and her partner, Alana Kloss, Lindsey Vonn, Kobe Jones from the MLS. And it just became this sort of snowball effect where these investors understood that we weren't just asking for a check. We were asking them to use their platform to drive attention, awareness for the sport, for women's football, for Angel City, and for these players, because then we could drive the most impact and then monetize them.
And you've got now, I think, over 100 investors, and that approach to sort of acquiring smaller investments in the club, that's quite unusual, isn't it? As you say, when you look at the traditional ownership of those other clubs in the WSL, I think there's only a handful that are tied to the men's club, which is a direct comparison to what we see here in our top leagues, where the majority are associated or already sort of corporate part of the men's club. But how does that work? Jason?
A club like ours that has 99 owners, and we'll probably have more soon. LAFC was the first one that had a little bit more of an ownership group. They had about 30 primary owners. We didn't set out to have 99, but the reality was, again, it wasn't about the check. It was, do you believe in our mission? Do you believe in our purpose? Will you help us build this? And if you go to an Eva Longoria or Kobe Jones or a Gary or a Jay Shetty platform, they can get this message out. They can drive attention and awareness. Was adding like visual support for us. And then also, I think being celebrities in their own right, like, ironically, they're not demanding. Like, they are here to help us when I need them. So it's, everyone always says, like, how can you manage all those people? Well, the reality is I know what's important to every one of them. I know who to go to ask for help when, and they're always willing to raise their hand. We do quarterly Zooms. It's the most incredible, day of the quarter, where I get to tell them, like, what we've worked on, what we're about to work on, and how they can get involved. But there is not a single that has not helped move Angel City forward in these last 2.5 years of building it.
No, very good. You talk about players there. I think that's really interesting, starting from a blank canvas. And for the participants that have joined from the UK, draft and the ability of selecting players through a draft is relatively uncommon. We are starting to see it in some sports. Is that how you signed those first, players to your roster? Was it through the expansion draft, or were there, because this concept of free agency, I understand, is only really starting to come into the US League with the signing of the CBA recently?
Hey, sorry, I'm back.
Yeah, no worries. Can you hear me now?
Can you hear me? Yeah, I can hear you now.
So
there were 3 different ways initially that we signed players. One was transfers. Pulled in players from AS Roma, from a team in Japan. So we pulled in international players. So we have about 6 international players. And then in the US, we have, to your point, drafts, which are very uncommon here. 2 types. One is expansion draft. So teams that joined, Sandy and myself, and the way the expansion draft works is the current 11 players.
We're just losing you a little bit. Just try again.
Can you hear me now?
I can.
Okay, great.
That's good. That's good. Thank you.
Yeah, let's hope it holds. So we did transfers. So we pulled in international talent. Then we have the expansion draft. So what that meant was the current 10 teams were able to protect 11 players. So both San Diego and I could draft 1 player from each team. You can imagine there was a lot of trades going on, so that they had to create a list of 11 protected players. And then there's the college draft. So there's about 4 rounds in the college draft. So those were 3 different.
We're just losing you again.
No. Sorry, Hattie. This is it's happening where I'm at. My apologies.
We can hear you loud and clear. Thank you.
Yeah. So anyway, we got traders, we got players from transfers, expansion draft, college draft, and then trades after the fact.
And the other thing that I'm interested in is from a commercial standpoint as well, because a lot's been made of the value that the club appears to have. Oh, can you hear me? Sorry.
Yeah.
Do you want to turn your camera off and just see if that makes any difference? Just bear with me, everybody that's online, and we'll get these technical issues resolved. Thanks everybody for your patience. Just ask Julie to rejoin. Hi Julie. Yeah. And I don't know whether it's worth turning the camera off. That old trick, whether that helps.
Oh my God, I don't.
Wait. I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
Okay, good. Yeah.
So I was just asking a question there about commercial revenue, because it's widely reported that Angel City have aced, let's say, driving sponsorship revenue, and no doubt that's linked to partially the profile that you have, as you've been explaining, with some very high profile investors on board leveraging their platform, and indeed the sort of social empowerment and female empowerment brand that you clearly has successfully launched. I guess my question is, and you've got a number of commercial partners, and I can see that they activate very well around the club, but how much freedom does the club get in and amongst the league? Because presumably there's some things that the league does centrally, like the broadcast deal, I think, which is up for renewal quite soon, and that might be quite a good area for growth, as opposed to sort of commercially what you're able to sell locally.
Yeah, it's there is a division. I think we're fortunate that it's a really young league. So there aren't as many restrictions yet as a more mature league would have. There are a couple of global partnerships that the league has. The biggest is being Nike. Nike is our kit partner. They are a performance partner. Outside of Nike, right now, we really get the ability to. That's really one of the only global deals that the league has. So, the league has a deal with Budweiser. We actually we partnered with Heineken. There are some rights that the league has that, we aren't, they get to commercialize. So like fantasy, by way of example, is a right that the league has, but gambling is for each one of the clubs because it's different in each state. So we've had a lot of license to be able to commercialize. Yes, and I would say we've done exceptionally well. Jess Smith, who runs our team, is absolutely incredible. And really, it's because we approach partners very differently. We talk about building a club based on purpose, which is to set higher expectations on and off the pitch. And so because we want to always have a positive, we have to think about that also. So when we launched the idea of bringing on partners, we launched the Angel City 10% sponsorship model, where 10% of our sponsorship dollars goes back into the community through our impact platform. And we created a social impact platform that has 3 pillars: equity, essentials, and education. So when we go and talk to a partner, we actually don't lead with, here's our audience, here's our social following, here's your reach, here's your frequency, here are your assets. We didn't have any of that to begin with. We were pre-selling. I mean, we closed around $1 million in 2021. We didn't even have a team yet. But really, we went in there, we led with, here's our purpose, here's our values, here's how we're going to show up together in the community, here's how we're going to capture that content, here's what we're going to do together, here's who we're going to partner with, and then also here are the assets you get with it. And because of that 10% give back, we also don't negotiate. I mean, it's really about, we are creating a partnership, we are coming together because we have shared values. Consumers today make purchases based on their values. And if we can show shared values and get that sort of positive brand, we think those customers and those fans are more valuable. And we were just so incredibly fortunate that we were able to find partners who believed in that. DoorDash, one of the first to sign on as our front of kit. Heineken is one of our founding partners. Therabody was one of our first partners. And then we had Birdies join our sleeve. Birdies is a fashion forward shoe line for women. Started off as slippers and has now moved into sneakers, but they're a startup in and of themselves. They've never spent money on brand. They're a direct-to-consumer when it comes to marketing. And there was so much brand alignment that they took a huge leap of faith to be on our sleeve. And then our backup kit is Sprouts Farmers Market. And with them, we work on nutrition and wellness. And we build this an 1.5 acre nursery and garden at a school that distributes something like 4,000 pounds of produce every month. There's 2 free farmers markets every month for the community. And so there's all these different ways that we give back, and we tell the stories of how we give back, which is way more valuable. We also, from the beginning, valued women's sports. We think about it as a handout or as like something to do us also, right? We recognize the pure fact of supporting women's sports. It's a smaller check size than men, but that doesn't mean it has to be cheap. And in fact, when we went to sell our front of kit, the first thing we did was to figure out what the most expensive women's kit out there was. And we thought it was around $750,000. So we decided that we would be more, like multiples more. We sold our front of kit for significantly more numbers. And our entire kit is one of the highest, value kits of all women's sports, and ranks up there with the MLS clubs as well. It's because we validate. We think actually investing in women and being a sponsor of women gives you significantly more share of voice, gives you better brand recognition, and more positivity in the marketplace. And you're starting to see that. A lot of in the US are actually moving away from men's sports to support women's sports. Gatorade being one, they didn't renew their deal with NHL. Sprouts, one of our partners, is only supporting female teams and female athletes. And even Nike has made it publicly known that they're leaning into women's sports more moving forward.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a momentum. So fans, you've grown a really sort of strong, loyal fan base. Have you been able to sort of utilize the data that you've acquired from the fans? And is that sort of one of your ways that you will look to build and grow that fan base next season and beyond?
Yeah, I mean, it started early where we really included the community as we were building a city. We included them in our crest design. We include them in which, partners from an impact standpoint we want to work with.
And Julie,
we work really closely with our...
Just cutting in there, because we've got a big sort of focus on fan engagement within sport, and in particular football here. Partly due to the independent review of football that is encouraging, and I think will probably ensure that clubs have to engage with fans on a more formal basis. How did you go about that? Because the fans aren't part of the ownership structure or anything like that. Is it something that you put out on social media and there was some sort of way to indicate what club crest they liked more or name, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, it was like I said, there was a fan base in LA before we started. Like there was a group of people that wanted an NWSL club. So when we said that we were building it, it became our first supporters group, right? And then we added another and another. And we currently have 6 supporter groups and 1 youth supporter group. So we were able to go directly to the supporter group council, to have brainstorms, to talk to them about designs, to show them what was happening, to create that dialogue right away with really what is your most passionate fan base. And most vocal fan base. Obviously, now that we've had games, we send surveys after every game to find out what worked, what didn't work, what do they like, what could be better. And obviously, we're going to use that data as we build out next year. But it played a role in the pricing. It plays a role in our experience. And it helps focus us on how to we just continue to make the product better. So we're just constantly. And we use them when things come up, whether they're good or bad, we're letting the supporters know what's happening. We're letting them know what our stance is. We're letting them know how they can get involved. When we were signing players early on, we had this, incredible relationship where we would share the signing of Kristen Press a day or two in advance so they could have their social content ready so we could use them to help build the social following of Angel City and the attention. And that took a lot of trust. So where we would be willing to share private information that, we would have a whole sort of launch campaign around or PR campaign around. And they were incredible. So, we would tell them the day or two before something would happen so they could be ready to help, share that news and help build attention and awareness for what we were doing. Real partners.
Yeah. And just before we perhaps go to the floor for questions, looking ahead then, I mean, it's been a hit, as we talked upon there, strong investment aligned to social values and purpose, a fantastic loyal and engaged fan base, sponsorship revenue is high. It also sounds that the NWSL itself is professionalizing, and things like having a commissioner and having better governance structures will help with the governance of the league going forward. I know your background and others involved in the club is technology and data and digital. Is that sort of a growth area for the firm? Looking ahead, are you able to provide any spoilers as to what we might see coming down the line for ACFC next season and beyond? Yeah, I mean, look, we as it relates to the football operations side of the house, data and analytics just isn't. It's so in its infancy. We definitely want to be a leader in the space. We're going to try to learn to be a leader in the space. At least in the US, I mean, obviously clubs like Chelsea are one of us, but, that's an opportunity. I think, how we recruit players and how we look at the draft is also going to be really interesting. We're really, our league is really different.
we have a salary cap. We have a minimum and maximum compensation. We have a set roster limit. We have a set number of players that can come from abroad. And those are all limitations. Sometimes I think make using data analytics hard. You're kind of boiling the ocean. You don't have a lot of levers to pull or assets at your fingertips. But I think that's going to change, especially as, women's sport, and women's soccer, globally is really starting to blow up. It's incredible to see the South crowds. They should need to be more than one-off. So, we had a goal of selling our home opener. Angel Cities plays at Bank of California Stadium that has 22,000 fans. We sold out our home opener. We sold out our rivalry game against San Diego, which we won. We sold out our following game, and then we sold out our this past weekend, which was our final match. So we sold out 4 of our games this year, which effectively was a third of 25% of games. You can imagine our goal next year is to sell out 50%. But it's the idea of, like, how do you build something people continue on to come back? How do you build an experience that's so unique that they can't anywhere else? How do you build a community that is inclusive and diverse and makes people feel safe, that they can come and be their authentic selves and really enjoy the sport the way they want it? After our final home.
Have you proactively gone out and sought those communities, or do you think it's just been a natural evolution based on the pillars of social value that you guys have established over there?
I mean, we were intentional about building a safe space. The focus was always in coming in, right? Creating a community that was diverse, creating a community that was inclusive, focusing on bringing you in. And that has resulted in, again, this incredibly sort of diverse community. After our final match at the bank, there was a tweet, and it said something like, you're going to laugh at how cheesy this is, but coming to the bank is now a healing experience. Many of us, this club helped us reshape our relationship with the sport and with the sport communities. It's just, women's sports is different. And I think Angel City was different because, again, it wasn't about building an experience for families that others came to. We built an experience where everyone felt at home and felt like there was something for them. It created a sense of belonging and community that, we're looking to just, continue to lean more and more into the LA community next year. People still don't know who Angel City is, so we still have work to do.
Yeah, but within the US landscape, obviously it is, all eyes are on it, and how much influence do you have over the league and some of those rules that you were mentioning there, the regulatory framework about salary caps and transfers and the like? Is it that 1 or 2 clubs have a bigger voice than others, or is it more collaborative than that? Sorry, Julie, I've just lost you again.
No, look, I mean, I think we always had a loud voice. I was always sort of loud in the boardroom. I think we have a lot more support for what we're saying now, right? The idea that if you invest, the revenue will follow. If you invest, the fans will come. If you invest, the community will support you. I think we have a lot of proof points to that right now. And look, the league needs to grow, right? We believe the NWSL has the best football in the world. We have the best athletes with, unequivocally today with the U.S. women's national team. We'll see about the friendly in a couple of weeks, how that plays out. Yes, I think the U.S. is going to win because, we
can't let that. We can't let that go.
But we can't. Yeah, it's going to be incredible. And I'll be back for it. But we can't rest, right? It's like, how do we invest? How do we grow? And it's not just compensation for the players, but it's also the facilities and the coaching staff and support, right? It's player care, it's player development off the pitch, right? I mean, these are incredibly young athletes. How do they build their brand? How do they build their product? How do they develop skills so that when they get off the pitch, they can create a living doing whatever it is that they love and following their passions. So compensation is a part of it, but it's how do you develop and invest in the entire ecosystem so that the players provide the best they possibly can on the pitch, which ultimately is going to pay dividends for the business that you're trying to build. And then for us, it'll allow us to have even greater impact because the more people that are paying attention to it, the more people that can then, find their club and find the team that they want to support.
Yeah. And do you take that seriously from a club perspective in terms of providing that player welfare type support that you've just referred to? Is that part of?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're the first. Yeah, we have an entire player care team that takes care of the players. You know, the NWSL is responsible for paying for housing and auto for. That's the first part. The second part is making them feel welcome and home. You know, we have a Japanese player, June Endo, who doesn't speak English, so we had a translator to begin with. You know, we have security. It's about how do you make them feel comfortable, and so their only focus is on playing football. That's what we're trying to create in Angel City.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, Julie, thank you very much. I'm going to just turn now to a couple of questions. We've had a lot of questions that have been submitted, so thank you very much for your active participation. The first question is back to sort of the investment and the investor angle. You know, I deal a lot with private capital investment in sport, and that's an emerging trend that we're seeing more and more of. And a question that's, or you know, a work stream that we have to carefully consider is the balance between the rights holder expectation and the investor's expectation for achieving an exit within a certain period of time. It's, you know, I don't know if you can share that with us, but is there a knife edge there to balance between when some of these high profile investors might be looking to make a return and exit the club?
Yeah, it's I mean, you know, we all know that, you know, there's no easy answer to exit for sports teams. You own it, you know, typically forever because you want to, right? It's a passion investment versus a, you know, necessarily like a financial investment, because getting out is so hard. I think it's going to change. I think we're going to start seeing more secondaries. We're seeing significantly more sales of teams and investment in teams today. Even the US alone, there's going to be now like 3 or 4 NFL teams that are for sale that, I mean, is, you know, triple what it was in the last 10 years. It's kind of incredible. And sports seems to be the one recession-proof industry that we have right now. Despite what's happening in the world or in the markets, the value of sports teams are going up. I mean, it's the simple scenario of supply and demand. There's just very little supply and a lot of demand. And that concept of scarcity not only drives up the value, but creates a way within, if you want to, you know, sell a minority stake or create a secondary market, there's always going to be buyers. So I think it's going to change. I think it's changing with private equity coming in, looking for a shorter horizon. But, you know, these are long investments. And, you know, Angel City's, you know, unlike most sports teams, I mean, we plan to be profitable in the next 3 to 4 years. You know, there are clubs that have never been profitable in their entire lifetime. But we're building the club in such a way that not only can we grow top line, but we can grow bottom line as well.
Yeah, very interesting. Particularly as probably the more traditional investment here, most looking at it through the lens of a private equity investor, is for that 5 to 7 year return on investment. So I think it's not surprising that the people that you've got around you and your club at the moment are in it for on a longer term basis.
Yeah, I mean, what you were saying earlier, like most of our investors are individuals. So the typical startup pitch is like, imagine you're never going to see this money again. So that's what they're focused on, right? Not like how much are going to make over what period of time. Now, I think the success of Angel City to date might be changing some people's horizons and perspectives on that. But really, it's like we're investing to build something, and we're seeing the value of our team increase, and we're going to continue to, you know, again, supply and demand. It'll play in the favor of those that are owners.
Yeah. And a question about sort of the commercial split amongst the clubs in the league. So take something like broadcast revenue, for example. May I ask, is that an equal split amongst the 12 clubs currently, or is it weighted based on success or other performance indicators?
So the NWSL, the National Women's Soccer League, is a single entity. You know, there's 12. It would be equal. It's equal amongst all the clubs.
Equal. Thank you. We just lost you for a moment, but I think we've heard the answer. So thank you very much. An interesting question here that's just come in, which is it? Would there ever be the possibility for the ordinary person, me or somebody else on this call, to invest in Angel City, or are you looking at sort of keeping your investor book of a certain type of investor?
And obviously, hear me? Hey, we back?
I've got you.
Hattie, can you
We're
hear me?
back. When I smile, you're back.
Yeah. So I was going to say, we actually thought about that at the beginning, early on, right? There are challenges in the US. You have to be an accredited investor. I was a founder and president of a company called Ouya, where we actually launched on Kickstarter. That's how we got started. And then you raise venture capital after that. We've looked at some possible. I love already pretty big. The league has restrictions about, approving who all the owners are. So I think we'd have to go through some hoops there, but it's a win-win. It's the same concept where, when the league wants to talk about limiting the owners, my first question is why? It's not more work if they're all minority investors, it's not more work for you. Like, it's more work for me. I'm saying it's not enough work, then why should it bother you? Because at the end of the day, I have 99 people that are incentivized to build the story of Angel City, to tell the story of the National Women's League, to tell the story of these players. Why would you want to limit that when their reach is significantly greater than yours, or potentially in some cases significantly greater than all of the teams combined? And so, the NWSL is, it's in its 10th year, but I think we're really still in our infancy, and we need to rethink how traditional sports is done, because the world has changed significantly. Yeah. When we were pitching Angel City, we talked about the fact that only 4% of sports media coverage in the US is about women's sports. And if you can't see it, you can't follow it, you can't invest in it, you can't come to it, you certainly can't be it. Today, that's still true, but I don't rely, solely on traditional media to tell our stories. We rely on social media. We rely on our players, right? Talks like this, like, we are getting out there and telling the story. And fortunately, the league has done some, strong media deals where you can find the games, whether it's on Paramount Plus or CBS or Twitch. And it's only going to get stronger as we continue to grow.
Fantastic. And then we've just got a minute or so. I just wanted to ask you about grassroots, actually, and sort of building the talent pipeline. Have you had any support from local organisations, government organisations, or council? And indeed, sort of, is that a key focus for you to not just be able to acquire players through the draft and the like, but also sort of start building your own quality sort of player academy pipeline?
Yeah, it's something that's talked about a lot in the boardroom. I expect us to launch some sort of next year or two. It's a significant investment. It's also different based on where you are. San Diego and LA will be a significantly more higher investment than, some of the other clubs by their location. But right now we have 12 clubs. We believe we can grow, another 2 to 4 clubs. But if we want to get even bigger than that, we really have to develop beyond just the college system. And so creating an academy system or development pipeline is going to be really important. So it's next. Right now we've been, growing our commercialization, getting the fans in the stadium, building the brand, making sure people know what Angel City is, getting it to be a standalone, viable entity. And then of course we want to start leaning into the local community and support it, whether it's building our own academy, joining others, but how do we add and not detract as we build our own development academy?
Fantastic. Well, very exciting. We'll watch this space. Well, look, we've got 2 minutes to go to the end of our hours up. I mean, I can't believe how quickly that's gone, but I really enjoyed it. And thank you so much, Julie, for your time this afternoon. I think just to sum it up, for me, Angel City is a case study, I think, for building a pro women's football team that's driving social change, as you've heard about, but at the same time also driving value for its investors. I think these are timely discussions as the future of women's football is under review at the moment. And I do believe that lessons can be learned from all of us involved in the game across the world as we grow from strength to strength. So thanks again, Julie, for giving up your time this afternoon. I know you're out and about at various training grounds, and we've obviously got leaders this week as well, which we're looking forward to. And if anybody would like to discuss any of the issues arising from the talk this afternoon or women's football in general, then of course, please do reach out. So thank you from me. Thanks, Julie.
No, my pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.